On the outskirts of Millbrook Valley stands a weathered farmhouse that whispers stories of better days. Its peeling paint and creaking porch belie a secret that would change 2 lives forever. Here, among overgrown fields and forgotten dreams, Jake Morgan repairs broken fences with calloused hands, never suspecting that the quiet woman working beside him guards a fortune that could buy the farm 100 times over. Sarah Bennett has spent years hiding behind faded jeans and simple living, yearning for someone to see beyond the numbers in her bank account. As autumn leaves dance across the ancient barn's worn floorboards, these 2 souls are about to discover that sometimes the richest soil lies in the most unexpected places. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning alarm cut through Jake Morgan's dreams like a hammer through glass. His hand found the phone by muscle memory, silencing it before the sound could wake Emma. Through the thin walls of their apartment, he could hear his 8-year-old daughter's steady breathing from the next room. These precious quiet moments were all he had left of peace these days. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, bare feet meeting cold floorboards. The stack of bills on his dresser seemed to glow in the pre-dawn darkness, each envelope a reminder of promises he was struggling to keep. The red "Final Notice" stamp on the topmost bill burned in his peripheral vision. Jake pulled on his work boots, the leather worn soft from years of use. They were like him, weathered but still holding together barely. In the kitchen, he packed Emma's lunch with practiced efficiency: peanut butter sandwich, cut diagonally, just the way she liked it, apple slices and the last granola bar from the box. He'd skip lunch himself today. Again. "Daddy!" Emma's voice drifted from her doorway, still fuzzy with sleep. She stood there in her favorite unicorn pajamas, brown, curls a wild nest around her face. "Hey, princess, you're up early. Is today the day, the important meeting?" Jake smiled, his heart squeezing. Of course she'd remembered. "Yeah, baby, the job interview at Bennett Farm. Can I see it after school? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. First I have to convince them to hire me." He checked his watch. "Go. Get dressed. We need to leave in 20 minutes if we're going to get you to school on time." While Emma got ready, Jake studied his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The lines around his eyes had deepened over the past year, but his shirt was pressed, his face cleanly shaved. He looked capable, reliable. He had to be. The drive, too. Emma's school was their usual morning ritual of silly songs and serious questions. Today's topic: why don't clouds fall down? Jake answered as best he could, grateful for his daughter's endless curiosity. It kept his mind off the knot in his stomach. "Have a great day, princess," he called as she hopped out of the car. "Mrs. Rodriguez is picking you up after school, remember?" "Good luck, Daddy. Love you." "Love you too, Em." He watched until she disappeared through the school doors, then pointed his tired pickup truck toward the outskirts of town. The Bennett farm had been a local landmark for generations, though it had fallen into disrepair over the past decade. The help wanted ad had been brief. Experienced handyman needed for extensive restoration work, long-term project, competitive pay. Jake needed more than competitive. He needed salvation. The gravel driveway stretched nearly a quarter-mile from the main road, lined with ancient maples wearing their autumn colors like royal robes. As he approached the farmhouse, Jake pulled his father's work gloves from the glove compartment, the ones he'd inherited along with a box of tools and a lifetime of half-finished dreams. A woman was waiting on the front porch, dressed in well-worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt. She couldn't have been much older than his 34 years, but something in her posture spoke of careful distance. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup. "Mr. Morgan?" She descended the porch steps with quiet grace. "I'm Sarah Bennett. Thank you for coming out." Her handshake was firm, calloused. Working hands, Jake noted with approval, not some city slicker playing at farm life. "Please call me Jake. And thank you for considering me." Would you like to walk the property? See what you'd be getting into? They spent the next hour touring the sprawling farm. Sarah pointed out every crucial repair: the sagging roof over the east wing, the compromised foundation of the old barn, the irrigation system that hadn't worked properly in years. Jake found himself already planning the fixes, seeing the potential beneath the decay. "It's a big job," Sarah said finally, studying his face. "Most people take one look and run." Jake ran his thumb over the worn leather of his father's gloves. "My dad always said anything worth doing is worth doing right. This place, it just needs someone to believe in it again." Something flickered in Sarah's eyes. Recognition, maybe, or hope. "When can you start?" Jake felt the weight of those bills on his dresser, heard Emma's morning questions, remembered his father's calloused hands, teaching him every tool in that inherited box. "Tomorrow," he said. "I can start tomorrow." Jake arrived at the farm just as dawn was breaking over the hills, his truck bed loaded with tools. The morning mist clung to the fields like a protective blanket, and somewhere in the distance a rooster announced the day. He smiled, remembering Emma's parting gift, a crayon bright card declaring him the best dad ever, complete with a drawing of him wearing what appeared to be a superhero cape. Sarah was already outside, balanced on a ladder against the front porch, examining the roof's edge. She climbed down when she saw him, that same careful distance in her movements. "You're early," she said, brushing dust from her hands. "Best time to start." Jake began unloading his tools. "Mind if I tackle that roof first? That water damage won't fix itself." Sarah nodded, then hesitated. "About payment terms." "End of each week is fine." Jake kept his voice neutral, though. His empty bank account screamed otherwise. "Actually, I was thinking we could do daily, for the first month at least." She pulled an envelope from her pocket. "And an advance to cover materials." Jake stared at the envelope, pride warring with necessity. "That's not standard procedure," Sarah cut in smoothly. "For a project this size." He thought of Emma's growing feet, the empty kitchen cabinets. "Thank you. That's helpful." They settled into an easy rhythm as the morning progressed. Jake worked on the roof, while Sarah cleared years of debris from the garden beds below. Occasionally, she'd ask his opinion on some aspect of the restoration, her questions revealing both knowledge and genuine curiosity. Around mid-morning, Jake noticed she'd disappeared inside. He was about to break for water when she emerged with 2 thermoses and a paper bag. "You forgot lunch," she said simply, setting them on the porch rail. "You didn't have to. Can't have my handyman falling off the roof from hunger." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "It's just sandwiches." The food was simple but good. Fresh bread, real turkey, crisp lettuce. Jake couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten a lunch he hadn't made himself. "My daughter Emma," he found himself saying. "She's convinced this place is magical, keeps asking to visit." Sarah's hands stilled on her thermos. "How old is she?" 8, going on 30 some days." He smiled. "She's already planning a garden in our apartment, 2 tomato plants in the window. They're not doing great, but she won't give up. She sounds determined. Gets that from her mother." Jake's voice softened. "Rebecca would have loved this place." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Would have? Car accident. 3 years ago." Jake surprised himself by adding, "Some days I think Emma's the only thing keeping me going." Sarah nodded, her eyes distant. "My parents died when I was 22. Car accident, too." She gave a small, sad laugh. Funny how life gives us these things in common. The moment hung between them, fragile as spider silk. Then Sarah straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. "The garden beds. If Emma's interested in plants, she'd be welcome to help. When you bring her by." Jake studied her face, sensing there was more to the offer than simple kindness. She'd love that. The afternoon passed in comfortable silence, broken only by the rhythmic sound of Jake's hammer and the rustle of Sarah clearing weeds. By sunset, the roof was patched and the first garden bed was ready for planting. "Good work today," Sarah said, as Jake packed up his tools. She handed him another envelope, his first day's pay. "Same time tomorrow. I'll be here." He hesitated, then added, Thank you for lunch and everything." She gave him that ghost of a smile again. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. Driving home, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been talking about more than just the farm. The envelope in his pocket felt heavy with possibility. He thought about Sarah's quiet strength, the careful way she held herself apart, and wondered what else she was rebuilding. Emma was waiting at Mrs. Rodriguez's, bursting with questions about the farm. As they walked to the truck, she clutched his hand. "Did you see any animals? Are there horses? Can I really come see it?" Jake lifted her into the cab, remembering Sarah's offer. "Actually, Princess, how would you like to help plant a garden?" Emma's squeal of delight echoed down the street. Jake laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. Sometimes, he thought, hope comes in the simplest packages: a daughter's joy, a day's honest work, and the promise of seeds taking root in freshly turned soil. The old farm ledger nearly crumbled in Jake's hands as he lifted it from the back of a dusty cabinet. He'd been clearing out the farm office, a task Sarah had been oddly hesitant about, when he found it tucked behind decades of paperwork. The leather cover bore an embossed date, 1950. "I see you found Herbert Bennett's legacy." Jake turned to find Sarah in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She crossed the room and gently took the ledger, handling it with the care one might give a precious artifact. "Your grandfather?" Jake asked. Sarah's fingers traced the embossing. "Great-grandfather. He built this place from nothing." She opened the ledger, revealing neat columns of handwritten figures. Back then, this farm fed half the county. Jake watched as she turned the pages, noting how her professional distance softened when she spoke of family. What happened? Progress. Larger farms, bigger operations. Then my parents. She closed the book carefully. "Things change. They don't have to stay changed," Jake said quietly. Sarah met his eyes for a long moment before setting the ledger on the desk. "Tell me about your father. You mentioned he taught you everything you know." "Dad was—" Jake smiled, remembering. He could fix anything. Had this saying, "Every broken thing has a story. Your job is to listen before you try to fix it." He ran a hand along the office's wood paneling. "This place has stories everywhere." "Like what?" Jake pointed to a series of marks on the doorframe. Height measurements, different dates, different kids growing up. He moved to the window. "These wavy glass panes, they're original. You can see the imperfections where they were hand-blown." His fingers found a carved initial in the sill. "HB. Herbert Bennett himself, maybe." Sarah's eyes widened. "I never noticed. Dad would have loved this place, all this history, just waiting to be preserved." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken by the sound of tires on gravel. Emma's excited voice drifted through the window as Mrs. Rodriguez dropped her off. "Ready to meet your new gardener?" Jake asked. Sarah smoothed her shirt, suddenly nervous. "I should have cleaned up the garden beds more." "Trust me, Emma won't care. She's just excited about the possibilities." They walked out to find Emma, spinning in circles on the front lawn, her backpack forgotten by the steps. She stopped when she saw them, suddenly shy. "Emma, this is Miss Bennett. She owns the farm." "Please," Sarah said, kneeling to Emma's level. "Call me Sarah." She pointed to the cleared garden bed. "I heard you're good with plants." Emma's shyness evaporated. "I have 2 tomatoes, but they're kind of sick. Dad says it's because our apartment doesn't get enough sun. But I keep trying, and I read 3 books about gardening from the library." "And did you know that some plants like to grow together? Like tomatoes and basil, they're best friends." Sarah listened intently as Emma rattled off more gardening facts, her usual reserve melting in the face of such enthusiasm. "Would you like to help me plan what to plant?" "Can I, really?" "Of course. In fact—" Sarah disappeared into the house, returning with a worn notebook. "This was my mother's garden journal. It has all her notes about what grows best here." Emma accepted the notebook with reverence. "Can I read it?" "Better than that. You can add to it. Write down everything we learned together." Jake watched the exchange with a warmth spreading in his chest. He'd seen Emma bounce back from so much, but this was different. This was her lighting up from within. Later, as Emma explored the garden beds with Sarah's mother's journal clutched to her chest, Sarah moved to stand beside Jake. "She's remarkable," Sarah said softly. "She makes it easy to keep going, even when things get tough." Jake hesitated, then added, "Rebecca, her mother, she used to say Emma had enough hope for all of us." Sarah watched Emma measuring the garden beds with careful steps. "Sometimes hope is all we need to start over." "Is that what you're doing here? Starting over?" The question seemed to catch Sarah off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but Emma called out excitedly, "Dad, Sarah, look what I found." She held up a tarnished metal tag green with age. It was in the dirt. They crossed to where Emma stood proudly. Sarah cleaned the tag gently with her shirt tail, then caught her breath. "It's from the original farm, the dairy certification from 1952. Emma beamed. "Can we keep it? For memories?" "For memories," Sarah agreed, something shifting in her expression as she looked between Emma and Jake. "And maybe for inspiration." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the repaired porch, Jake realized that somehow, without him noticing, the farm had begun to feel less like a job and more like a possibility, a chance not just to rebuild something old, but to grow something new. The old farmal tractor squatted in the back of the barn like a sleeping giant. Its red paint faded to a dusty rose. Jake circled it slowly, assessing the challenge ahead. He'd promised Emma they'd try to get it running. Her eyes had lit up at the idea of a real farm tractor, but now, facing the rusted machinery, he wondered if he'd been too optimistic. "She hasn't run in 15 years, Sarah said from the barn doorway. Morning light haloed her figure, and Jake noticed she'd started wearing her hair loose more often. Dad's pride and joy once upon a time. Jake ran his hand along the tractor's hood. "Mind if I take a look inside? Be my guest, though I should warn you." Sarah stepped into the barn, a familiar glint in her eye. The carburetor's shot. Fuel lines probably rotted too. Jake paused in the act of lifting the hood. "You know engines?" "Dad taught me. Said a farmer who can't fix their own equipment isn't much of a farmer." She moved closer, pointing to various parts. "This model's notorious for vapor lock. And see this, the governor spring's missing." "I'm impressed." Sarah shrugged, but Jake caught the pleased flush in her cheeks. "Haven't had much chance to use that knowledge lately." "Well then," Jake grabbed his toolbox. "Want to help me bring her back to life?" They worked together through the morning, their hands brushing occasionally as they passed tools back and forth. Sarah knew the engine's history, every repair and modification her father had made. Jake contributed his own mechanical expertise, learned from years of keeping his ancient truck running. "Emma's going to love this," Sarah said as they took a water break. "She has such enthusiasm for the farm. Sometimes I worry about that," Jake admitted. "Getting her hopes up about this place, when we're just here temporarily." Sarah went still. "Temporarily." "Well, yeah, once the restoration's done." "Right, of course." Sarah's professional mask slipped back into place. "I should check on the irrigation repairs." She was gone before Jake could respond, leaving him with the unsettling feeling that he'd said something wrong. He turned back to the tractor, but the easy rhythm of their work had been broken. The afternoon brought Emma, bursting with news about her school day. She stopped short at the sight of the partially dismantled tractor. "What happened to it?" "We're fixing it," Jake explained. "Want to help?" Emma scrambled up onto the seat, pretending to steer. "Can I drive it when it's fixed?" "We'll see. First, want to learn about how engines work?" For the next hour, Jake guided Emma through basic engine components, teaching her the names and functions. She soaked it up like a sponge, asking intelligent questions that made him glow with pride. Sarah returned as the sun was setting, carrying 3 bottles of water. She'd pulled her hair back up, but there was dirt on her cheek that she hadn't noticed. Jake found himself wanting to brush it away. "Made progress?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Emma's practically a mechanic now," Jake said. "Tell Sarah what you learned about internal combustion." Emma launched into an enthusiastic, if somewhat jumbled, explanation. Sarah's professional demeanor cracked. a genuine smile breaking through as she listened. "You know," Sarah said when Emma finished, "I think I have something you'd like to see." She disappeared into the barn's back room, returning with a photo album. "This was the tractor when it was new. That's my dad driving it." The three of them sat on an old bench, Emma between them, looking through photos of the farm in its heyday. Sarah's father grinned from every page, looking so alive it made Jake's chest ache with recognition. "He's like my dad," Emma said suddenly. "In the pictures Mom kept, always smiling really big." Sarah's breath caught. She touched the photo gently. "Yes, exactly like that." As evening approached, Emma reluctantly said goodbye to the tractor, extracting promises that she could help. "Again tomorrow." Jake watched her skip to Mrs. Rodriguez's waiting car, then turned to find Sarah still looking at the photo album. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for sharing that with her. For all of this." Sarah closed the album carefully. "It's nice sometimes, remembering the good parts." Their eyes met in the gathering dusk, and Jake felt that same spark of connection, stronger now. But Sarah looked away first, clutching the album to her chest like a shield. "See you tomorrow, Jake." He watched her walk back to the house, her silhouette strong against the sunset. The tractor loomed behind him, a project half finished, like so many things in his life. But for the first time in years, unfinished didn't feel like failure. It felt like possibility. The whispers started at Miller's General Store, where Jake stopped for supplies. Martha Miller, whose family had owned the store for 3 generations, leaned across the counter as she rang up his purchase. "So, you're working up at Bennett Farm?" Her eyes sparkled with barely contained curiosity. With the mysterious Miss Bennett, Jake concentrated on counting out exact change. "Sarah, what's mysterious about her?" "Oh, honey," Martha's voice dropped conspiratorially. "Nobody knows where she came from. Just showed up one day, bought the old place outright. Cash, they say. And have you noticed? She never goes into town, never socializes, just stays up there all alone." Jake thought of Sarah's gentle patience with Emma, her hidden knowledge of engines, the way she sometimes looked at the farm with such profound longing. Maybe she just values her privacy. Privacy's one thing, but Martha fingered the silver locket at her throat, a gesture Jake had noticed she made when sharing particularly juicy gossip. "My cousin works at the bank in Cedar Rapids. Says the Bennett name's connected to some big fortune out east. Industrial money. But if that's true, why's she living like a hermit in a run-down farm?" "Maybe because people gossip too much," Jake said, more sharply than he'd intended. He gathered his supplies, softening his tone. "Thanks, Martha. Have a good day." The conversation nagged at him as he drove back to the farm. Sarah was waiting by the barn, clipboard in hand, reviewing their progress on repairs. She wore the same work-worn jeans and flannel she always did, but Jake found himself looking closer, searching for signs of hidden wealth. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, noticing his scrutiny. "You seem distracted." Jake shook his head. "Just town talk." "Ah." A shadow crossed her face. "Martha Miller's latest theories about the mysterious recluse. You know about that?" Sarah touched something at her neck, a simple silver locket Jake had never noticed before. "Small towns run on stories. I've heard most of the ones about me." She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "My favorite is that I'm in witness protection." "Are you?" "Would I tell you if I was?" Their eyes met, and suddenly they were both laughing, the tension broken. Sarah's real laugh, Jake realized, was nothing like her usual careful chuckle. It was full and rich, transforming her entire face. "The truth is boring," she said finally. "I just needed a fresh start. Somewhere I could be myself, without—" She trailed off, her hand going to the locket again. "Without expectations," Jake suggested quietly. Sarah's eyes snapped to his face, startled by his perception. "Something like that." Before Jake could respond, Emma's voice rang out across the yard. She was running toward them, waving a paper triumphantly. "I got an, Mrs. Patterson loved my report about the farm." Sarah knelt to examine the paper Emma thrust toward her. "You wrote about us?" about the gardens and the tractor and all the history. She said it was the best presentation in class. Emma beamed. Can I show you where I want to plant the sunflowers? Now? You promised. So I did. Sarah stood, offering her hand. Lead the way, farm expert Emma. Jake watched them head toward the garden beds, Emma chattering excitedly, while Sarah listened with genuine interest. Whatever secret Sarah might be keeping, her connection with Emma was real. Later, after Emma left with Mrs. Rodriguez, Jake found Sarah sitting on the porch steps, her locket open in her hands. Without thinking, he sat beside her. It was my mother's, she said before he could ask. Inside is the only picture I have of them together. She tilted the locket, revealing a photo of a laughing couple on their wedding day. Jake noticed the quality of the bride's dress, the elegant setting, definitely not small-town Iowa. They look happy. They were. Are you going to ask? About? Sarah closed the locket carefully. The rumors, the money, why I'm really here. Jake thought about his own story, the struggles, the losses, the fierce love for his daughter that kept him going. Everyone has the right to write their own story, even if it's different from the one they started with. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Thank you. The evening settled around them like a comfortable blanket. From somewhere in the fields, crickets began their nightly symphony. Jake felt Sarah's shoulder brush against his, light as a butterfly's wing. Emma's report, Sarah said finally. She called this place our farm in it. I can tell her, no. Sarah's hand found his in the growing darkness. No, I like it. Our farm. They sat there until the stars came out, hands linked, neither needing to fill the silence with words. Sometimes, Jake thought, the biggest truths are the ones we don't need to speak aloud. The bank notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, its official letterhead stark against the pile of bills. Jake read it 3 times, each word hitting like a physical blow. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. The apartment, Emma's home, their shelter, would be gone in 30 days unless he could come up with 3 months of back payments. His hand shook as he stuffed the notice into his back pocket. Emma couldn't see this. She'd already lost so much. He couldn't let her lose her home. 2. At the farm, Jake threw himself into work with desperate intensity. Every swing of his hammer, every turn of his wrench felt like fighting against time itself. Sarah noticed, of course she did, but she gave him space, directing Emma's attention to the garden when she arrived after school. It wasn't until sunset, after Emma had left, that Sarah approached him. He was still working, replacing rotted boards on the barn's exterior despite the failing light. Jake, her voice was soft but firm. You've been at it for 12 hours straight. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Just trying to earn my pay. Sarah's hand touched his arm, halting his movements. Talk to me. The gentle concern in her voice nearly broke him. Jake sagged against the barn wall, the foreclosure notice burning in his pocket. I messed up, he admitted. After Rebecca died, there were hospital bills, funeral costs. I got behind on the mortgage, thought I could catch up, but he pulled out the crumpled notice. 30 days. Sarah read it quickly, her expression unreadable. How much? 3 months' payments. Plus fees. Jake laughed bitterly. Might as well be $1 million. I can help. No. The word came out sharper than he intended. I'm not looking for charity. It wouldn't be charity. It would be an advance on your wages for all the extra hours you've put in. Jake pushed away from the wall. I can't. You've already done so. Let me finish. Sarah's voice took on an edge he'd never heard before. This isn't about you, Jake. It's about Emma. What happens to her if you lose the apartment? The question hit home. Jake thought of Emma's room, with its carefully arranged books and the little garden in the window. Their home wasn't much, but it was hers. She's already lost one parent, Sarah continued softly. Don't let your pride cost her stability, too. Jake closed his eyes, remembering Rebecca's voice. Sometimes being strong means knowing when to accept help. I'll pay back every cent, he said finally. Sarah's relief was visible. I know you will. She pulled an envelope from her jacket. "I had this ready, just in case. There's enough for 4 months' payments. Give yourself some breathing room." Jake stared at the envelope. "Why?" "Because I know what it's like to lose everything." Sarah's hand went to her locket. "And because Emma deserves her garden, even if it's just 2 tomato plants in a window." Their eyes met in the gathering dusk. Jake saw something new in Sarah's gaze, a vulnerability, a shared understanding, of loss and hope. "Thank you," he managed. Sarah nodded, then turned practical again. "Now go home, get some rest. The barn will still be here tomorrow." At home, Jake paid the mortgage arrears online immediately, his hands steady now. Then he checked on Emma, sleeping peacefully with her latest library book about farming still open on her chest. In the window, her tomato plants reached toward the streetlight, stubborn and determined. Just like their caretaker, he thought about Sarah, about the weight of the envelope she'd given him. The money itself was a lifeline, but it was her understanding that touched him deepest. She'd seen through his pride to what really mattered: Emma's welfare, their little family's stability. Jake pulled out his phone and typed a message. "Emma's home is safe. I don't know how to thank you." Sarah's reply came quickly. "You already have, by trusting me enough to accept help." Then a moment later, "Sweet dreams, Jake." He fell asleep with the phone still in his hand, his dreams filled with images of flourishing gardens and a silver locket catching the sun. Somewhere in those dreams he heard Rebecca's laugh mixing with Sarah's, as if giving her blessing to this new chapter in their lives. The foreclosure notice lay forgotten on the kitchen counter, its threats neutered by an act of kindness that felt less like charity and more like family taking care of its own. Emma's birthday cake recipe sat propped against the farmhouse kitchen window, Sarah's brow furrowed in concentration as she measured flour for the 3rd time. She'd never baked anything from scratch before, but Jake had mentioned it was a tradition. Rebecca had always made Emma's birthday cake herself. "You really don't have to do this," Jake said from the doorway, trying not to smile at the smudge of flour on Sarah's cheek. "I want to." Sarah checked the recipe again. "Though I'm starting to think rocket science might be easier." Jake moved beside her, gently taking the measuring cup. "Here, let me show you the trick Mom taught Rebecca." He demonstrated how to level the flour with the back of a knife. "See? Perfect measure every time." They worked together in comfortable synchronization, Jake guiding Sarah through each step. The kitchen filled with the warmth of preheating ovens and something else, something that felt remarkably like home. "Dad! Sarah!" Emma's voice carried from outside. "The sunflowers are blooming." "Perfect timing," Sarah whispered. "That'll keep her distracted." While Emma explored her garden, they finished the cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, just like Rebecca used to make. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she added the final decorations. "What if she doesn't like it?" Jake touched her arm gently. "She'll love it because you made it." The afternoon sun painted the kitchen golden as they gathered around the farm table. Emma's eyes widened at the sight of the cake, 9 candles flickering in welcome. "You made this?" she asked Sarah. "Your dad helped." "A lot." Sarah smiled nervously. "Happy birthday, Emma." Emma closed her eyes, made her wish, and blew out the candles in one determined breath. When she opened them again, Sarah was placing a small, wrapped package beside her plate. "Open it," Sarah encouraged. Emma carefully removed the paper, revealing a velvet box. Inside lay a delicate silver charm bracelet. The first charm was a tiny garden trowel. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed. "There's room for more charms," Sarah explained. "We can add one for every new thing you learn about farming." Jake stared at the bracelet, his mind racing. The quality was obvious. This was no simple trinket from the local jewelers. The silver gleamed with unmistakable authenticity, the craftsmanship excellent. "Sarah, this is too much." "It's not." Sarah's voice was firm. "Every farmer needs their tools, right, Emma?" Emma was already fastening it around her wrist. "Look, Dad, it's perfect." Jake watched his daughter's joy war with his growing unease. The bracelet, the mortgage money, Sarah's careful avoidance of town. Martha Miller's gossip echoed in his mind. After cake, Emma rushed to show her garden the bracelet, leaving Jake and Sarah alone in the kitchen. "That bracelet," he began. "Jake, no, let me finish. I need to ask—" Sarah's phone buzzed, cutting him off. She glanced at it and paled slightly. "I have to take this. I'm sorry." She hurried from the kitchen, her voice drifting back. "Yes, Mr. Harrison, no, don't sell anything yet. I'll handle it myself." Jake stood in the empty kitchen, surrounded by birthday happiness and growing questions. Through the window, he could see Emma showing her bracelet to the sunflowers, her face glowing with delight. Sarah returned, looking composed, but Jake noticed the tension in her shoulders. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Just business," she began, clearing plates with studied casualness. "What were you going to ask?" Jake looked at her, really looked. The careful way she held herself, the conflict in her eyes, the growing pile of evidence that she was more than she claimed to be. But he also saw the flower in her hair, the nervous pride when Emma had loved the cake, the genuine affection in every interaction with his daughter. "Nothing," he said finally, "just thank you for making her birthday special." Sarah's relief was visible. "She makes it easy. Emma has a way of making everything brighter. Like her mother," Jake said softly. "Like her father, too." Their eyes met over the dishes, and Jake felt that familiar warmth spread through his chest. Whatever Sarah's secrets were, they could wait. Today was for celebrating Emma, for chocolate cake and silver charms, for the simple joy of being together. But later, alone in his apartment, Jake found himself researching the bracelet's maker, a prestigious jeweler in New York. The price range made his head spin. The mystery of Sarah Bennett deepened, but so did his certainty that there was more to her story than mere wealth could explain. The email from Emma's school appeared innocent enough, but its contents made Jake's coffee go cold in his hand. "We are pleased to announce a generous anonymous donation to our STEM program, enabling the creation of a new greenhouse and garden. Education Center." He scrolled through the details: state-of-the-art equipment, master gardener instructors, and a special mention of Emma Morgan's inspiring presentation about traditional farming techniques, as partial inspiration for the project. Anonymous, just like the mysterious check that had appeared to cover Emma's overdue lunch account, just like the sudden funding for her class's field trip to the botanical gardens. Jake set his phone down and looked around his kitchen. The mortgage was current now, thanks to Sarah's advance. Emma's new backpack, a replacement for her, worn-out one, had appeared as a spare. Sarah had lying around. Each incident seemed innocent enough alone, but together. At the farm that morning, Sarah was teaching Emma about crop rotation, using colored markers to draw patterns in a notebook. "Morning," Jake called, trying to keep his voice normal. "Emma, could you check on the tomato seedlings? They might need water." Once Emma was out of earshot, Jake turned to Sarah. "Interesting email from the school today." Sarah's hands stilled on the notebook. "Oh, a greenhouse program. Anonymous donor." He watched her face carefully. Funny timing right after Emma's presentation. "Jake, the lunch account too, the field trip." His voice was low, controlled. "How long have you been watching us, planning this?" Sarah stood, arms crossed protectively. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're playing fairy godmother to my daughter without bothering to consult her father." "I was trying to help." "By going behind my back? By what, buying her affection?" The moment the words left his mouth, Jake knew he'd gone too far. Sarah's face went white. "Is that really what you think of me?" Her voice trembled. "That I'm trying to buy Emma's love?" Before Jake could respond, Emma's voice rang out from the garden. "Dad, Sarah! The first tomatoes are turning red." Sarah composed herself with visible effort. "You should go see. It's her first real harvest." "Sarah, we'll talk later." She gathered the notebook, her movements precise. "When we're both calmer." Jake found Emma cradling a small tomato in her hands, like it was made of gold. Her charm bracelet caught the morning light as she pointed out the changing colors. "Can we make a salad with it?" "When it's ready?" Emma's eyes shone. "Sarah showed me how to tell when they're perfect for picking." Jake's anger deflated. Every interaction he'd witnessed between Sarah and Emma had been genuine, full of real affection and shared excitement. Whatever Sarah's motives for the donations, using Emma hadn't been one of them. He found Sarah in the barn, methodically organizing tools that were already perfectly arranged. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "What I said about buying affection, that was wrong." Sarah kept her back to him. "Did you know Emma's been struggling in science class? Not because she doesn't understand, but because they don't have proper equipment for hands-on learning. She's a tactile learner, Jake. Like you, like her mother," Jake finished softly. Sarah turned finally, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I have money, more than I need. When I see a way to help, to make things better, especially for a child who reminds me so much of myself at that age. Is that so wrong?" "No." Jake moved closer. "But you could have told me. Would you have let me?" The question hung between them. Jake thought of his reaction to the mortgage help, his constant struggle with pride versus necessity. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'd like to think we're at a place where we can be honest with each other." Sarah touched her locket, a gesture Jake now recognized as self-soothing. "There's so much I want to tell you, but I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of changing how you see me, how Emma sees me." She met his eyes. "I like who I am here with you both. I don't want to lose that." From the garden, Emma's delighted laugh floated in. Sarah smiled despite herself. "She's so much like Rebecca," Jake said, "finding joy in growing things, in nurturing life." "She's like you, too," Sarah's hand found his. "Strong, determined, willing to fight for what matters." Their fingers intertwined, a bridge across unspoken truths. Outside, Emma's garden flourished under the autumn sun, each plant a testament to patience, care, and the simple miracle of growth. The yellowed newspaper clipping fell from between the pages of Herbert Bennett's old ledger as Jake was moving it to restore the office shelves. The Wall Street Journal masthead caught his eye, but it was the photo that stopped his heart. A younger Sarah, dressed in elegant business attire, stood beside a distinguished older man. The headline read, "Bennett Industries heiress takes helm. Sarah Bennett, named CEO of $4.2 billion family empire." Jake's hands shook as he read the article. Sarah Bennett, heir to the Bennett industrial fortune, youngest CEO in the company's history, praised for her brilliant business acumen and innovative leadership. The article was dated 3 years ago, right before she'd mysteriously purchased a rundown farm in Iowa. The sound of Sarah's truck pulling up outside sent him scrambling to hide the clipping, but something made him stop. No more secrets, no more half-truths. Sarah entered the office carrying 2 cups of coffee, her smile fading as she saw his expression. "Jake, what's wrong?" He held up the clipping wordlessly. Sarah set the coffee cups down with careful precision, her face draining of color. "Where did you find that?" "In your great-grandfather's ledger. Interesting reading." Jake's voice was quiet. $4.2 billion, Sarah." She sank into the office chair, suddenly looking very young and very tired. 4.8 now, actually. Not that I've touched it since I left." "Left what? Your life? Your responsibility?" The words came out harsher than he intended. "My cage," Sarah's voice cracked. "Do you know what it's like? Being nothing but a number to everyone you meet, every friend, every relationship, every interaction tainted by the question of what they really want from you." Jake thought of Martha Miller's gossip, his own reaction to the school donation. "So you ran away?" "I chose myself." Sarah stood, pacing the small office. The company was suffocating me, the board, the shareholders, the endless politics. I was losing myself. When my parents died, the money felt like a weight around my neck, dragging me under. "So you bought a farm." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I bought hope, a chance to build something real, with my own hands." She gestured to the ledger. Herbert Bennett built all this from nothing but determination and hard work. I wanted to know if I could do the same, by pretending to be someone you're not, by being who I really am." Sarah's eyes flashed. "The Sarah you know, the one who works beside you, who teaches Emma about gardens, who loves this land, that's the real me. The CEO, the heiress, the society figure, that was the pretense." Jake absorbed this, thinking of all the moments they'd shared, the way she handled tools with confidence, her genuine joy in Emma's achievements, her careful stewardship of the farm's history. "Why didn't you tell me?" "At first, because I tell no one. Then," she met his eyes, "because what we have, what we're building here, it's real. I didn't want to risk losing that. And the help you've given us, the mortgage, Emma's school, was me using what I have to help people I care about." Sarah moved closer. "I've spent my whole life watching people use money to control others. I never wanted to be that person. But seeing you struggle, watching Emma's potential being limited by circumstances, I couldn't just stand by." Jake looked down at the newspaper photo. The Sarah in the image was polished, powerful, untouchable. The Sarah before him now had dirt under her fingernails and worry in her eyes. "Emma adores you," he said finally. "Not your money, not what you can give her. Just you. And you." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Before Jake could answer, the office door burst open. Emma rushed in, face flushed with excitement. "Dad! Sarah! The school just announced—" She trailed off, sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" Sarah reached for the newspaper clipping, but Jake caught her hand. "Nothing's wrong," he said, holding Sarah's gaze. "Sarah just shared some important news with me, about her family." Emma looked between them. "Is it bad news?" "No, sweetheart." Sarah knelt to Emma's level. "It's just complicated. But what matters is that nothing changes between us. I'm still me." "Of course you're you." Emma said it with such certainty that both adults smiled. "Can I tell you about the greenhouse now? They're letting my class help design it." Sarah shot Jake a questioning look. He nodded slightly. "Tell us everything," Sarah said, pulling Emma close. "Every detail." As Emma launched into her explanation, Jake watched Sarah's face. The tension had melted away, replaced by genuine interest and affection. Money hadn't bought that connection. Time, patience, and love had built it, one garden lesson at a time. The newspaper clipping lay forgotten on the desk, yesterday's news overshadowed by today's simple joy of being together. The half-finished renovation plans lay scattered across Jake's kitchen table, each page representing a future he wasn't sure about anymore. The original scope had been clear: repair, restore, complete. But now, looking at his careful drawings and measurements, he wondered what he was really building here, and for whom. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Emma forgot her garden journal here. Want me to drop it by?" Jake stared at the message, remembering the Wall Street Journal. "You photo." How many corporate boards had that same woman texted with? How many million-dollar decisions had she made with those same fingers? "I can pick it up tomorrow," he replied, then set the phone face down. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, hugging her worn copy of The Secret Garden to her chest. "Dad, are we still going to the farm tomorrow?" The hope in her voice made his chest ache. "I don't know, Princess. I've got some things to figure out. Because of Sarah's secret?" Jake looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Emma came to stand beside him, looking at the renovation plans. "You're afraid things will change. Like when Mom died and everything changed. Sometimes his daughter's perception took his breath away." "Emma, but Sarah's still Sarah," Emma continued, tracing the drawing of the barn with her finger. "She still knows exactly when to water the tomatoes, and she still laughs at your bad jokes, and she still looks at us like we're her favorite people." Jake pulled Emma into his lap, despite her being almost too big for it now. "When did you get so wise?" "Mom used to say the heart knows what's real." Emma fingered her charm bracelet. "Sarah's heart is real, Dad, even if she has lots of money." The simple truth of it hit him hard. He thought of Sarah's hands in the soil, her quiet joy in Emma's achievements, the way she touched her mother's locket when sharing pieces of her past. None of that had changed with the revelation of her wealth. His phone buzzed again. A photo. From Sarah, the sunset lighting up the newly repaired barn, Emma's garden in the foreground bursting with life. The caption read, "Missing our favorite farmers." Emma reached over and turned the phone right side up. "Can we go tomorrow? Please?" "The sunflowers need checking." Jake looked at the renovation plans again. The careful measurements and detailed notes weren't just about fixing a building. They were about building a future. One he'd started to imagine sharing with Sarah before the truth came out. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small. "I don't want to lose another home." Jake hugged her tighter, understanding suddenly that the farm had become home to both of them, not just a job site. And Sarah had become more than just their employer. He reached for his phone and typed, "We'll be there in the morning. Emma says the sunflowers can't wait." Sarah's response was immediate. "They're not the only ones who've missed you both." Later, after Emma was in bed, Jake spread the renovation plans out again. The future they represented seemed both more complicated and simpler now. Complicated because loving a billionaire heiress hadn't been part of his life plan. Simpler because, as Emma had said, the heart knows what's real. He added a note to the margins of the garden layout. Expanded children's section, Emma's design. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he sketched in a small sitting area near the herb garden, remembering how Sarah loved to watch the sunset from that spot. The plans were still incomplete, the future still uncertain, but maybe that was okay. Maybe some things needed time to grow, like Emma's beloved sunflowers reaching for the sky 1 inch at a time. His phone lit up with one last message from Sarah. "The farm feels empty without you both here." Jake looked at the renovation plans, at his daughter's beloved book left on the table, at the photo of the sunset-lit barn. Everything that mattered, most in his life, had started as something broken being carefully, lovingly rebuilt. "We'll be home soon," he typed back, and found that he meant every word. The storm came without warning, a late autumn tempest that turned the afternoon sky an ominous green. Jake was checking the barn's new support beams when he heard it, a sound like a freight train bearing down on them. "Sarah!" he shouted over the rising wind. "Get Emma inside!" Through the rain, he saw them running from the garden, Sarah's arm protective around Emma's shoulders as they raced for the farmhouse. Thunder cracked overhead like artillery fire. The barn door slammed in the wind, and Jake's heart stopped. The restoration wasn't complete. The new crossbeams weren't fully secured. If the structure shifted now, he fought his way through the gale to the barn entrance. Inside, the massive space groaned like a living thing. Rain poured through gaps in the roof they hadn't yet repaired, and the wind found every weakness in the ancient walls. "Jake!" Sarah appeared in the doorway, rain-soaked and determined. "Emma's safe inside. What do you need?" "The support beam. It's not braced." He pointed to where the massive timber was starting to shift. "If it goes, the whole roof could come down." Sarah was already moving, grabbing rope from the wall. Together, they fought to secure the beam, their hands meeting on the wet hemp as they pulled against the storm's fury. "Like this!" Sarah called, looping the rope exactly as he'd taught her months ago. "Perfect. Now the other side." They worked in seamless coordination, anticipating each other's movements, communicating through gesture and shared understanding. The wind howled its fury, but the beam held. A horrible cracking sound split the air. Jake looked up to see a section of the old roof starting to peel away. "Sarah, get out! It's not safe." "I'm not leaving you." She was already climbing the ladder to the hayloft, tool belt slung over her shoulder. "Tell me what to do." Through the storm's chaos, Jake felt a surge of something powerful: pride, admiration, love. This was Sarah Bennett, billionaire CEO, scaling a ladder in a hurricane to save a barn. No, he corrected himself, this was just Sarah, the woman who'd learned every repair alongside him, who'd rather work with her hands than sit in a boardroom. They battled the storm together, securing what they could, their bodies in constant motion. When a piece of debris nearly hit Sarah, Jake pulled her close, instinctively. She fit against him perfectly, both of them breathing hard. "You okay?" "Never better," she said, and despite everything, she was smiling. The storm raged for another hour before finally moving on, leaving them exhausted but triumphant. The barn had sustained damage, but the core structure, their months of work, had held. They stood in the doorway, surveying the aftermath. Sarah's hair had come loose from its ponytail, and there was dirt streaked across her cheek. Jake had never seen anything more beautiful. "Sarah, about everything, about who you are." "Who I am," she interrupted, "is someone who just helped save this barn, who loves this farm, who—" She stopped, touching her locket with trembling fingers. "Who what?" "Who loves this life, here, with you and Emma." She met his eyes. "The money, the company, that's what I have, not who I am. Today proved that more than anything." Jake looked at her, really looked. Gone was any trace of the polished CEO from the newspaper photo. This was his Sarah, with mud on her boots and determination in her eyes. The woman who'd learned to bake for Emma's birthday, who knew every tool in his father's box by name now, who'd fought beside him to save their barn. Their barn. The thought hit him with startling clarity. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Not of your money, but of losing. This, the real you. You're the only one who's ever seen the real me." She stepped closer. "You and Emma, you never wanted anything except me, just Sarah." From the farmhouse, Emma's voice carried across the yard. "Dad! Sarah! Come look! There's a rainbow!" They turned to see Emma on the porch, pointing at the sky where, indeed, colours arched across the clearing sky. Without discussion, they linked hands and walked toward her. "The barn okay?" Emma asked as they approached. "It's still standing?" Jake said, "We make a good team." "The best," Sarah agreed softly. They stood together on the porch, watching the rainbow brighten against the retreating storm clouds. Emma slipped her hand into Sarah's free one, completing their circle. Sometimes, Jake thought, it takes a storm to show you what's worth fighting for, and who you want beside you in the battle. Sarah's father's pocket watch sat heavy in her palm, as she and Jake settled onto the porch steps that evening. Emma was inside, absorbed in documenting the storm's effect on her garden in her journal, leaving them alone in the purple dusk. "Dad gave me this the day I graduated business school," Sarah said, her thumb tracing the worn silver case. "It was his father's before him. The day he handed it to me, he said, 'Time is the only true measure of wealth.'" She clicked it open, revealing the delicate mechanism inside. "I didn't understand what he meant back then." Jake watched her face in the fading light. "And now? Now I know he wasn't talking about money at all." She smiled sadly. "He was talking about this. Moments that matter. Time spent doing what you love, with people you love." "Tell me about them," Jake asked softly. "Your parents?" Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers still moving over the watch. "Dad was unexpected. Everyone saw the CEO, the business titan. But at home, he'd make pancakes every Sunday, shaped like whatever I was interested in that week. Dinosaurs, rockets, chemical formulas. He'd spend hours getting them perfect." She leaned slightly against Jake's shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. "Mom was the dreamer. She came from money too, but she never cared about it. She painted, kept gardens, taught me that beauty matters as much as balance sheets. They were so different, but so perfect together." "How did they—" "Car accident. Black ice on a mountain road." Sarah's voice caught. "They were heading to our cabin in Vermont. I was supposed to be with them, but I had a board meeting I wouldn't skip. My last words to Dad were about quarterly projections." Jake covered her hand with his, feeling the watch pressed between their palms. "After they died, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't Sarah anymore. I was the Bennett heir, the future of the company, the keeper of the legacy. Every decision I made affected thousands of people's lives. Every relationship came with agenda items attached." She turned to face him. "You want to know why I bought this farm? The day I signed the papers, the realtor asked me what I planned to do with it. For the first time in years, I could say I don't know, and it felt wonderful. No business plan, no strategic objectives, just possibility. And now, Jake's voice was gentle. What do you want now? Sarah looked out over the farm where the setting sun painted everything in gold. I want this. The quiet mornings, the honest work, the joy of building something real. I want Emma's excitement over every new bloom in her garden. She met his eyes. I want you, the way you see me, not my bank account, the way you taught me to use every tool in that box, never doubting I could learn. The way you love with your whole heart, even after loss. Jake thought of his own journey. The struggles after Rebecca's death, the fear of opening his heart again, the unexpected way Sarah and the farm had healed them both. My dad left me his tools, he said. It wasn't much, compared to, he gestured at the watch. But he taught me the same lesson yours did, that real wealth isn't in what you have, it's in what you build, who you build it with. Jake, Sarah's voice wavered, I need you to know something. The company, the board, they want me back. There's pressure to resume my role, to be the Sarah Bennett they need me to be. What do you want to be? She opened the watch again, studying the steady movement of its hands. I want to be the Sarah who knows how to fix a tractor, who can bake a birthday cake even if it takes 3 tries, who's helping raise a remarkable little girl to believe in growing things. She closed the watch with a decisive click. I want to be this Sarah, your Sarah. Then be her. Jake tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The rest is just details. Big details. Complicated ones. So we'll figure them out together, he smiled. I'm pretty good at fixing complicated things, remember? Sarah laughed softly, the sound mixing with the evening cricket song. I remember, though technically I'm the one who figured out the tractor's fuel line problem. See? We make a good team. From inside, Emma called out, Dad! Sarah! I found a nest of baby bunnies in the garden. The storm didn't hurt them. They stood together, Sarah carefully pocketing her father's watch. Before they went in, Jake caught her hand. For the record, he said, this Sarah, the real one, is pretty amazing. Sarah rose on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. So is this Jake, the one who taught me that some things are worth more than all the money in the world. Together, they went to see Emma's discovery, their fingers intertwined, their hearts beating in time with the steady tick of a beloved father's watch. The local newspaper article sat propped against the coffee pot in the farmhouse kitchen. Historic Bennett Farm Restoration Revives Community Heritage. Below the headline was a photo of the 3 of them, Jake, Sarah, and Emma, standing in front of the newly restored barn. Emma's garden bloomed in the foreground, a riot of autumn colors. They actually quoted me, Emma said proudly, reading the article for the 3rd time that morning. 8-year-old Emma Morgan, whose educational garden project has inspired a new generation of young farmers, demonstrates the farm's continued relevance in modern agriculture. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. That's because you're the expert. The whole town's talking about it, Jake said, pouring coffee. Martha Miller called it a miracle of restoration, both the farm and the mysterious Miss Bennett's social life. Sarah groaned. I knew public would start the gossip mill. Too late now. Jake handed her a coffee mug. The whole town saw us at the Harvest Festival yesterday. The festival had been Emma's idea, a celebration of the farm's restoration and her school garden project's success. What had started as a small gathering had grown into a community event, with half the town turning out to tour the restored buildings and gardens. Sarah had been nervous about the public attention, but seeing the joy on Emma's face as she led tours of her garden made it worthwhile. And when Jake had taken her hand in front of everyone, proud and unafraid of what people might say, she'd felt something settle in her heart. Mrs. Patterson wants me to do a special presentation, Emma announced, still reading, about traditional farming methods and modern sustainable agriculture. Can I use the farm as an example? Of course, Sarah said. This is your home too. The words slipped out naturally. but they made everyone pause. Emma's face lit up while Jake reached for Sarah's hand under the table. "Really?" Emma asked. "Even with everything?" Sarah knew what she meant. The board of Bennett Industries had been calling daily, pressing her to return. Her former life was pushing at the edges of this new one she'd built. "Really?" Sarah met Jake's eyes, drawing strength from his steady gaze. "I've made my choice. The company can run without me. What we're building here, matters more." Emma launched herself at Sarah, wrapping her in a fierce hug. "I love you," she whispered. Sarah held her close, feeling tears threaten. "I love you too, sweetheart." Over Emma's head, she saw Jake watching them, his expression soft. They'd come so far from those first careful days of employer and employee. Now, sitting in the morning sun with Emma's artwork on the fridge and Jake's tools beside her gardening gloves, Sarah felt truly home. A car crunched on the gravel outside. Through the window, they saw Mrs. Patterson's sensible sedan parking beside the barn. "That's my ride to school." Emma gathered her things, then paused. "Can I tell her about us being a family?" Sarah's heart swelled. She looked at Jake, who nodded. "Yes," he said. "No more hiding." Emma hugged them both and rushed out. Through the window, they watched her chattering excitedly to her teacher, gesturing at the farm and her garden. "You're sure about this?" Jake asked quietly. "Going public means the press will eventually find out who you really are." Sarah touched her father's watch in her pocket. "Let them. I'm not ashamed of my past. But this is my future." She turned. "To him, our future, if you want it." Jake pulled her close. "I want it, all of it, the farm, the family we're building, every complicated, wonderful piece of it. Even the billions?" she teased. "Even those," he kissed her softly. "Though I'd rather have you with empty pockets than anyone else with full ones." Sarah melted into his embrace, thinking of how far they'd come. The article on the table spoke of restored buildings and preserved history, but the real restoration had been of their hearts. Jake learning to love again, Emma finding stability, Sarah discovering her true self. Outside, Emma's voice carried back to them. "And we're going to plant an entire butterfly garden next spring. Sarah says we can expand all the way to the old oak tree." Jake chuckled. "Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us." "Good thing we make such a great team," Sarah said. They stood together in the morning light, coffee cooling forgotten, simply holding each other. Through the window, the restored farm stretched out before them, no longer a hiding place, but a foundation for their future. The engagement ring nestled in Jake's old toolbox looked nothing like the massive diamonds featured in the society pages Sarah's family favored. He'd found it at an antique shop in Cedar Rapids. A delicate band with a small but perfect sapphire, reminiscent of the cornflowers that grew wild along the farm's fence lines. The worn velvet box spoke of history, of love that endured through generations. He was checking the ring one last time when Emma burst into his workshop, face flushed with agitation. "Dad, there's a fancy car coming up the drive, like really fancy." Jake's heart sank as he recognized the sleek black luxury vehicle approaching. Sarah had warned him her family wouldn't stay away forever. "Emma, go find Sarah. Tell her—" "No need." Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face tight. They called. "This morning, I was hoping to warn you, but—" A distinguished older couple emerged from the car. Sarah's aunt and uncle, Jake realized. The woman's critical gaze swept over the farm, lingering on the patches of newly painted barn wall. "Sarah, darling," her voice dripped artificial warmth. "We've been so worried. Aunt Caroline, Uncle Richard." Sarah's tone was perfectly polite, yet distant. "What brings you to Iowa?" "The board is concerned, dear." Caroline stepped carefully around a garden bed. "This little sabbatical of yours has gone on long enough. The company needs its CEO. The company has an excellent interim CEO. But the Bennett name is right here," Sarah interrupted, gesturing to the farm. "Where it started," Richard cleared his throat. "We've heard rumors about your involvement with the handyman." Jake felt Emma stiffen beside him. He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "Jake," Sarah said firmly. "His name is Jake. And yes, we're together." Caroline's perfectly maintained smile slipped. "Darling, think of your position. The press will love it." Sarah's voice took on a familiar steel. "Small-town restoration expert helps billionaire heiress rediscover her roots. They'll eat it up." "Sarah." "No." Sarah moved to stand beside Jake and Emma. "I've made my choice. The farm, this life, this family, this is what I want." "Family?" Caroline's gaze fell on Emma with calculated assessment. "Dear, you can't possibly—" "Don't." Sarah's tone could have frozen fire. "Don't you dare say another word about Emma." Emma, who had been quietly watching the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Sarah's teaching me about the farm's history, about Herbert Bennett, and how he built something real here. Isn't that what family legacies are supposed to be about?" Caroline blinked, thrown off script by this small girl's clarity. "From the mouths of babes," Richard muttered. Sarah knelt to Emma's level. "That's exactly what legacies should be about. Building something real, something that lasts." Jake felt the ring box press against his leg from inside the toolbox. Everything he'd planned, the sunset proposal in Sarah's favorite garden spot, Emma's carefully rehearsed part in the surprise, seemed to fade in importance. What mattered was this moment, this choice. He reached into the toolbox. Speaking of building something real, he dropped to one knee, opening the worn velvet box. "Sarah Bennett, will you marry me? Here now, in front of everyone who needs to know exactly where you belong." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the sapphire ring. "It's perfect," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Emma cheered as Jake slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger. Caroline made a choked sound. "But darling, what about the prenup?" Sarah laughed. "I'll sign whatever you want, because Jake's right. This is where I belong, with my family." "The board won't like it," Richard warned. "The board works for me, not the other way around." Sarah's voice was firm. "And I can run a company from anywhere, even a farm in Iowa." Emma tugged at Caroline's designer sleeve. "Would you like to see my garden? Sarah says I have Herbert Bennett's green thumb." Something in Caroline's expression softened as she looked at Emma's earnest face. "I would like that very much." As Emma led the stunning socialite toward her proud rows of vegetables, Jake pulled Sarah close. "Not exactly how I planned this," he murmured. "It was perfect." Sarah touched the sapphire. "Like this ring. Like you." Over by the garden, they could hear Emma explaining crop rotation to an increasingly fascinated Caroline. Some seeds, Jake thought, can grow in the most unexpected soil. The property deed lay on the farmhouse kitchen table between them, its crisp legal pages stark against the worn wood. Sarah watched Jake's face as he read, her engagement ring catching the morning light. "I don't understand," he said finally. "You want to put the farm in all our names." "Not just the farm." Sarah pulled out more documents. "I'm creating a trust. The farm, an education fund for Emma, provisions for our future together, all of it legally separated from the Bennett corporate holdings." Jake stared at the papers, his throat tight. "Sarah, I can't." "Yes, you can." She reached for his hand. "Because this isn't about money. It's about building something together as equals, as a family. But this much is a drop in the ocean compared to what you and Emma have given me." She squeezed his fingers. "Jake, when I came here, I was hiding. Now I'm choosing us, choosing this life, choosing to build something real together." Emma's voice drifted in from outside, where she was showing Caroline around her expanded garden. The older woman had stayed on after the proposal, surprisingly captivated by her great-niece-to-be. "Did you know," Emma was saying, "that Herbert Bennett used to grow prize-winning tomatoes right here? Sarah found his gardening notes in the attic." Jake smiled despite his inner turmoil. "She's quite the tour guide. She's quite the everything." Sarah moved closer. "Jake, I know your pride is struggling with this, but think about what my father said about time being the only true wealth. This farm, our life here, it's not about the money. It's about securing our future, Emma's future, so we can focus on what really matters. Building something together, Jake echoed. Exactly. Sarah touched his cheek. You've never treated me differently because of my wealth. Don't start now. Through the window, they watched as Emma proudly showed Caroline her latest project, a butterfly garden designed entirely by herself. The elegant socialite was actually kneeling in the dirt, examining a chrysalis with genuine interest. She's going to need new shoes, Jake observed. Aunt Caroline, she has hundreds. Sarah grinned, but I think she might be learning what real value looks like. Jake looked down at the deed again, seeing beyond the legal language to what it really represented, a foundation for their future, built on trust and love rather than pride or obligation. Partners? He asked softly. In everything. Sarah pulled out a pen. Although I still say I'm better at fixing fuel lines. Keep dreaming, Bennett. Jake took the pen, his signature strong and sure beside hers. Emma burst in, Caroline following more sedately. Dad, Aunt Caroline says we can apply for historic garden status. Will you help me fill out the forms? Jake caught Sarah's eye. What? Do you think, partner? Should we go for it? Partner. Emma looked between them. Sarah held up the signed deed. The farm belongs to all of us now, officially. If you want to apply for historic status, it's your choice too. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Our farm? Forever? Forever, Jake confirmed, his earlier hesitation melting at his daughter's joy. Caroline cleared her throat. I may know some people on the Historical Preservation Board, if you'd like my help, of course. The offer hung in the air, not just help with the application, but a bridge between their two worlds. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. We'd love that, Aunt Caroline. The older woman's carefully maintained facade cracked into a genuine smile. Well then, Emma, shall we start on those forms? As Emma led her aunt to the study, chattering about Herbert Bennett's agricultural innovations, Jake pulled Sarah close. You know, he murmured, for someone who came here to hide, you've built quite a visible life. Funny how love does that. Sarah looked around their kitchen, at Emma's artwork on the fridge, Jake's tools by the door, her father's watch on the windowsill. Makes you brave enough to be seen. Jake kissed her softly. Speaking of being seen, Martha Miller is going to have a field day when this gets out. Let her. I'm done hiding. Sarah touched her engagement ring. Although maybe we don't mention the exact size of the trust fund. Probably wise. Jake grinned. Besides, the really valuable stuff isn't in any bank account. Through the study door, they could hear Emma explaining crop rotation to Caroline, with the same passion Herbert Bennett must have had all those years ago. The farm's past and future were merging, creating something new and wonderful. Sarah leaned into Jake's embrace, feeling the weight of the signed deed in her hand. Not a burden now, but a promise. Together, they were building something that no amount of money could buy, a legacy of love, growth, and the simple miracle of belonging. The family photograph hung above the restored farmhouse fireplace, capturing a moment from their engagement party. Sarah and Jake sat on the porch steps, Emma between them, all three laughing at something off-camera. The restored barn provided a perfect backdrop, its fresh paint glowing in the sunset light. It was a simple shot, nothing like the formal portraits that lined the Bennett family mansion, but it radiated joy. The flowers should go there, Emma declared, pointing to the garden arch she and Sarah had designed. And Dad and Sarah will. Stand right where the sunflowers are tallest. The wedding was 3 days away, and the farm hummed with activity. Sarah had insisted on keeping it small and intimate, despite Caroline's initial protests about social obligations. In the end, they'd compromised. A simple ceremony at the farm, followed by a formal reception later for the corporate world. The arch looks perfect, Sarah said, joining them in the garden. She wore old jeans and one of Jake's flannel shirts, her engagement ring glinting as she adjusted a wayward vine. Your sunflowers are showing off. Like they know it's a special day, Emma beamed. Do you think Mom would have liked them? Sarah knelt beside her, sharing a look with Jake. They'd talked about this. about keeping Rebecca's memory alive while building their new family. "I think she would have loved them," Sarah said softly, "just like she would have loved seeing you become such an amazing gardener." Jake watched his two favorite people, his heart full. The past year had transformed them all. Emma blooming like her beloved flowers, Sarah finding her true self, Jake learning to open his heart again. "The photographer's here," Caroline called from the porch. She'd become a surprising ally in their plans, her event planning skills balanced by a new appreciation for simplicity. "Emma, shall we show her your special photo locations?" Emma rushed off excitedly, leaving Jake and Sarah alone in the garden. Sarah leaned into him, fitting perfectly against his side. "Having second thoughts?" he teased. "It's not too late to elope." "Never." Sarah touched the locket at her neck. A companion. Now to her father's watch. "This is exactly where I want to be." The locket held new photos now. Her parents on one side, and on the other a copy of the engagement party shot that hung above their fireplace. Past and present merged into a hopeful future. Inside the farmhouse, they could hear Emma giving the photographer her carefully prepared tour. "And this is where Dad taught Sarah how to fix the tractor, and over there is where we had our first family dinner, and wait until you see the garden." "She's got the whole story memorized," Jake smiled. "It's a good story." Sarah looked around at their transformed home. City girl runs away to farm, falls in love with handyman and his daughter, finds herself in the process. Don't forget, the part where the handyman turns out to be pretty good at restoring more than just buildings. Sarah kissed him softly. "That's my favorite part." The sound of cars on the gravel drive announced the arrival of more wedding preparations. The local community had insisted on helping. Martha Miller was coordinating the food. Mrs. Patterson's class had made decorations, and even David from the feed store had contributed his secret recipe punch. "Sarah," Caroline called, "the florist needs your approval on the arrangements." "And Dad," Emma added, "Mrs. Miller wants to know where to set up the pie table." They shared one more quiet moment in their garden, surrounded by the life they'd built together. "Ready to face the chaos?" Jake asked. Sarah looked at their home, at Emma directing traffic with all the authority of a junior wedding planner, at Caroline somehow managing to make farm formal work as a design concept, at the community coming together to celebrate their love. "You know what?" She squeezed his hand. "I'm ready for everything." The engagement party photo caught the late afternoon light, the happy family it showed about to expand officially. But the truth was, they'd been a family long before papers were signed or rings exchanged. They'd built it slowly, carefully, with the same patience and dedication they'd used to restore the farm. Emma's voice carried across the yard. "And wait until you see where we're having the ceremony. It's where the sunflowers are tallest, because Sarah says they reach for the sky just like love reaches for our daughter." "The poet," Jake chuckled. "Our daughter," Sarah repeated softly, the words still new enough to bring tears to her eyes. Together, they walked through their garden to join the wedding preparations, their footsteps sure on the path they'd built with love, trust, and the courage to believe in new beginnings. The hand-painted mailbox at the end of the gravel drive read "The Morgan Bennetts" in Emma's careful lettering, decorated with twining sunflowers and butterflies. Below it, a smaller sign announced "Bennett Heritage Farm, Eston 1950, restored, 2024. 1 year after the wedding, it stood as a testament to their united family and the legacy they continued to build. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her father's watch beside her laptop as she finished a video call with the Bennett Industries board. She'd found her balance, running the company remotely 3 days a week, dedicating the rest to the farm and family. The board had adapted, especially after the positive press about the company's new sustainable agriculture initiative, inspired by the Heritage Farm's success. "And that concludes the quarterly review," she said, closing her laptop. "Now for the real important meeting of the day." Outside, Emma's voice carried across the autumn air as she led her school group through the teaching garden. At 10, she'd become the farm's youngest tour guide, sharing her passion for agriculture with other children through the new education program they'd established. The original Bennett family grew prize-winning tomatoes right here, Emma explained, to her rapt audience. And now we're using the same methods, but with modern sustainable practices. Who knows what sustainable means? Sarah smiled, remembering her own first lessons in farming. Now Emma was the teacher, her knowledge built from 2 years of hands-on experience and countless hours studying Herbert Bennett's journals. The screen door creaked as Jake entered, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables. Garden club's getting quite a lesson out there. She's a natural. Sarah helped him sort the harvest, just like her dad is a natural at restoration. The farm had become a model for historical preservation and modern farming practices working in harmony. Jake's restoration work had earned recognition from the State Historical Society, leading to consulting requests from other heritage properties. He took on only local projects, though his heart belonged to this land. Mrs. Patterson asked if we'd host the school's harvest festival again this year, Jake said, washing tomatoes at the sink. Apparently we're becoming a tradition. Speaking of traditions, Sarah touched her locket, which now held 3 photos. Her parents, their wedding day, and the latest edition. An ultrasound image. Their little secret for just a few more weeks. Jake's hands stilled. Still feeling okay? Perfect. Sarah rested her hand on her still flat stomach. Though I'm not sure how much longer we can keep it from Emma. She's too observant. Keep what from me? Emma burst into the kitchen, face flushed with excitement from her tour. Her charm bracelet jingled, now full of farming-themed charms, marking each milestone of their life together. Sarah and Jake exchanged a look. Well, Sarah began, how would you feel about being a big sister? Emma's eyes widened. Really, when? Is it a boy or girl? Can we plant a special garden for the baby? Will they love farming too? Slow down, sunshine, Jake laughed. One question at a time. Actually, Sarah said, we were thinking you could help us plan the nursery. Maybe design a little garden outside the window, like you have in yours. Emma launched herself at them both, creating a family hug that made Sarah's heart swell. Through the window, they could see her school group exploring the butterfly garden, Mrs. Patterson beaming with pride at her star student's success. Later, that evening, as the sun set behind the barn, the 3 of them sat on the porch steps, their favorite spot for family meetings. Emma was already sketching nursery garden plans, her ideas flowing as freely as the creek that ran through their property. What about a name? She asked suddenly. If it's a girl, can we name her after Mom? Jake hugged her close. What do you think, Sarah? Rebecca Morgan Bennett, Sarah said softly. It's perfect. And if it's a boy, Emma continued, we could name him Herbert after the first Bennett farmer. They laughed together. The sound, mixing with cricket song and the rustle of corn in the nearby fields. Sarah leaned against Jake, his arms strong around her shoulders, while Emma continued sketching between them. The mailbox caught the last rays of sunlight, its painted sunflowers glowing like real blooms. Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them here, from hiding to belonging, from brokenness to healing, from separate paths to one shared journey. Hey, Jake said softly, noticing her thoughtful expression. Penny for your thoughts? Sarah touched her father's watch, her engagement ring, her locket, the physical markers of past, present, and future all linked together. Just thinking? About time, she said, and how sometimes running away can lead you right where you're meant to be. Emma looked up from her sketch. We're meant to be here, right? All of us? Yes, sweetheart. Sarah wrapped her free arm around Emma. This is exactly where we're meant to be. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The farm settled into its evening rhythm, cattle lowing softly in the distance, autumn leaves rustling their lullaby, the old house creaking its contentment. Here, in this moment, they were more than just a family. They were a story come full circle, a legacy renewed, a love that had grown from the richest soil of all, the heart's own truth.